We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list. To me, this is a very sad moment, and we will win this. And as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it.
Well, we shall see about that. That's President Trump early this morning declaring victory and once again claiming fraud in the 2020 election. The president is promising to go to the Supreme Court in an attempt to perhaps stop ballot counting, which continues in a handful of key states where the winner is yet to be determined. And here's a quick update that came in just 5 minutes ago, coming from President Trump's campaign manager, Bill Stepien. He says the president plans to immediately request a recount in Wisconsin. That race still too close to call, really, for the most part. It's within 1 percentage point. President Trump, well, here's the law, actually. If the race is within 1 percentage point, the trailing candidate can then force a recount. Stepien said in a statement that the president is well within the threshold to request that recount, and we will do so immediately. Twitter also censored this tweet from President Trump overnight. Quote, "We are up big, but they are trying to steal the election. We will never let them do it. Votes cannot be cast after the polls are closed." And also, there's been some evidence of Twitter clamping down on tweets from Democrats also claiming victory today. Not as much, but there is some of that as well. Some discussion about Nevada and Democrats trying to claim Nevada, Twitter pushing back on that. Well, lawsuits over these ballot measures and other things will be certainly playing out in states all over the country. But when it comes to how this issue is disputed and how an election is ultimately determined once the courts get involved, well, we're going to learn a little bit about that now and welcome in legal analyst and university professor Thane Rosenbaum. Thane, thanks so much for being with us.
Anytime, John.
And I kind of made a joke last night that there weren't enough lawyers in America to prepare for what we are about to see in this country, and a big difference between the 2000 recount, which was hyper-localized to pretty much one county in one state. We have Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and other places where we're going to see these legal battles play out. How do you see it all working out?
Well, John, we finally found something for all those lawyers to do. It's interesting. Remember, Bush v. Gore serves as precedent, even though the case itself said that it was limited to only the present circumstance. But last week, in an emergency petition before the Supreme Court brought by Republicans from Pennsylvania, Justice Kavanaugh invoked Bush v. Gore, which I think came as a surprise to people because people believed that the Supreme Court said this would not function as precedent in a presidential election year, but he spoke of it. And the only reason, John, you would ever mention the words Bush v. Gore is if you want to stop counting. If you want to stop a count, that's the 2 words you should say, Bush v. Gore, because that's what it represents, stop counting. And so that's really, it gives you a sense of what Roberts and, by the way, at least 3 other conservative justices felt about Pennsylvania's Supreme Court, North Carolina's election board, both unilaterally on their own extending the deadline. Why is this important, John? Because the American Constitution says that state legislators are mandated, responsible to establish rules for federal elections, not state courts, not federal elections officials, legislators. So one of the things I think the Trump administration, the Trump campaign is going to say is that it was unconstitutional from the beginning, even with the pandemic, to extend the deadline, that the only way to extend deadline is for the legislatures of Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania to pass new laws, election laws. No other entity could create that exception to the deadline. And that's what I think that if you go back to the Supreme Court, that's what 4 of the conservative justices right now would suggest, that that's where Bush v. Gore comes in.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, Thane, and we obviously have a lot of time to go. It's going to be methodical. And the other thing, too, with Bush v. Gore is that Al Gore still had some options open. He chose not to pursue those options, and we know that's not going to happen here. Both sides will exhaust every opportunity they have to make sure really what they want is, we know they want their votes to be counted and the other votes not to be counted if they are illegitimate. Thanks, Thane, for your time. We appreciate it, and we will definitely check back in with you. As I mentioned, this isn't going to be changing anytime soon.
Anytime, John.
All right, so votes are still being counted across the country right now. Joe Biden holds a very slim lead in Michigan, also in Wisconsin and Nevada. If he holds on to those 3 states, Biden would reach the threshold of 270 electoral college votes. That's what you need to secure the White House. President Trump is up slightly in North Carolina and Georgia, and he leads by a bigger margin in Pennsylvania, where about 95% of the vote is counted. But again, the outcome still in question. Stay with us. We have more to come in the next hour of our program.